So let's look at question 2. In this question, students need to describe the advantages and disadvantages of somebody studying overseas. We've looked before at what students need to do to answer this question, so now let's look at the answer that one student gave to see how it would do in the IELTS exam. This is their answer, and if we think first of all about task achievements, the first thing we think about is word length, and in terms of word length, this is over 300 words, so it's fine. Once we know it's long enough, we think about if they understand the question, and in their introduction they explain what their essay is going to be about, and importantly, they do so using different words to the question. If you repeat words and phrases directly from the question, they will not be counted as part of your word count. When we look at this essay, we can also see in the conclusion that they have a clear answer to the question. They describe the advantages and the disadvantages, and most importantly, they give their opinion, which is something that the question was asking for. If we look at the essay in more detail, we can see in the second paragraph that they're identifying different advantages, and in the third paragraph they talk about disadvantages. Because there's a clear answer to the question, this student is on target for their score of 6.5. If we move on to think about coherence and cohesion, one of the first things we'd look at is paragraphing, to make sure that every idea has its own paragraph and that the paragraphs are a good length. In this question, there might be a slight problem with the third paragraph because it isn't quite as long or fully developed as it should be. However, each paragraph has a very clear purpose and addresses a different part of the question, so that's good. When we look at the answer, there's a logic to it. There's an organization that we can see when we read this answer, that first of all the student is going to talk about the advantages before looking at the disadvantages and then giving their opinion. Looking a little more closely, we can see that the student is making use of cohesive devices, of language that connects ideas together. What's also important is that they're making use of language which references items so they don't have to repeat things. This is necessary to show how ideas are connected, and it lets you talk about something without using the same language all the time. Looking at this, it's quite clear that this student would be on target in terms of coherence and cohesion. The next criteria to look at is vocabulary, the lexical resource, and generally this answer has a high level of vocabulary. There's a lot of sophisticated language and also the use of some nice terms like experience culture shock, take the initiative, and it's important to have these chunks of language, these phrases of words that are commonly used together. What's also good about this answer is that there's a variety of language. So when the student talks about loneliness, they can also talk about a feeling of being isolated. And this use of synonyms is very important to show the variety of language that you have, it is good to show as much of your vocabulary as possible. If you make a mistake, that doesn't have to be a bad thing. In IELTS, you still get benefit for trying to use sophisticated vocabulary. Looking at this, there's a nice range of vocabulary, there's good variety, and there's some high-level vocabulary use, and so this would also be on target. The final category to think about is grammar. Now, when we look at this, there are some very good grammatical items. There's also a mistake where the student hasn't really gone back and looked at their essay. This is an example of a sentence where the student had two different ideas and put them in the same sentence. The problem comes at the end where they say it can be isolating. That doesn't grammatically fit with the sentence, and they would have had to have edited it, perhaps to say something like, when settling into a new country, which can be isolating. So this is a problem. However, there are still quite a few examples of sophisticated language use. This first one is a good use of parallel structures. This is when we use the same structure throughout a sentence. We have an increase in student independence, which is a noun, widening of cultural experience, which is a noun, and formation of a more holistic person, which is another noun. So we have three nouns used in parallel. There's also use of modals, may, could, might, and what's nice is that this is a passive modal. We have future continuous, and also sophisticated sentence structures like this one. So even though there are mistakes in this, generally the control and accuracy of the grammar is very good, and so again this student would be on target. When we look at the answer overall, it's a clear answer to the question, which is well organized, and it uses accurate grammar and vocabulary so we understand everything that the student is trying to say. As such, this answer would be on target for the 6.5 the student would like.